Okay, so my chapters were chapter 4, 5, and 6, and they were the Rainy River, on the Rainy River, enemies, and friends. And I'm gonna kind of forget about enemies and friends because they're like 4 pages together. And on the Rainy River is probably my favorite chapter in almost all of the things they carried because it's brilliant. Okay, let's just face it. In the story, it's when Tim O'Brien comes home and he finds the draft letter, and he's bitter about it, and he's very upset, and he can't get out of it because at the time that he's drafted, the Army's no longer accepting deferrals for graduate school, and he's saying, "I'm too smart for this. I'm just." He just doesn't want to go to war. A war he doesn't believe in, most of all, and so he debates about what his options are. It's either go to war or flee to Canada. And he talks about how he hates the people in the city where he lives and how it's all their fault and he blames them. And I'm inclined to agree because it's these people who think that the war, maybe it's not great, but they're like, oh, our boys are going off to war and it's going to be fine. And he talks about the platitudes that people give him. And it's like, no, it won't. No. So Tim O'Brien decides that he is going to go and flee to Canada. Right before the border, he stops by this like little cabin hotel scenario and meets Elroy, however you pronounce his name. And this is when the story gets really interesting for me because he just spends like a week almost with this guy, and he says it's like Elroy knew what he wanted to do. He takes him out on the boat, and literally Tim O'Brien is in the middle of the divide between the U.S. and Canada, which also stands for the divide between his childhood and adulthood, the divide of the war, the divide of the United States, pretty much. And he can't do it. He can't flee to Canada. He can't. He just cries because he doesn't know what to do. And in the end of the chapter, he says, "I went to war. I was a coward." And I think that was like the most jarring thing for me when I first read it, because you think of war as, somebody's courageous and they're brave and they're a hero, and he sees it as him being a coward. He talks earlier in the chapter that this indecision that he had was like a moral schizophrenia, and I think that, equating it with an illness, because most of the time we're just like, oh, I don't know what to do, I'm confused. Equating it with an illness, that's something serious. He means business. And that was my alarm clock, sorry. And then in Friends, he's talking about this friendship between the guys who stole a pocket knife. But Enemies is also pretty funny because Lee Strunk and Dave Jensen, I believe, have this kind of, they have this agreement that if one of them is not going to return whole back home, that the other's going to kill them. And I believe it's gets Lee Strunk gets his foot cut off or something like that, and he keeps telling Dave Jensen, "Don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me," and Dave agrees not to kill him, and then at the end of the chapter you find out that Lee died in the helicopter. And Dave Jensen doesn't seem very sorry. He seems almost relieved about it. And I think that goes to say a lot about the promises in soldiers, that Dave was really upset that he couldn't meet that promise to his friend, to his fellow comrade. So that's it. I look forward to hearing from whoever has chapters 6, 7, and 8. I mean, 7, 8, 9. I can't count.